Hey there guys, it's Metro and we are back with another wild weekend after a beta build's launch, and I'm going to say it again. A lot of people seem to be confused about what this series is, so let's clear the air on this right now, okay? This is not me making a guide based on the things that have changed, okay? It seems like some people believe that based on the last few videos. I'm just giving my opinions on things that have changed, and more so trying to give you guys a place to talk about these things. I'm not here knowing everything, and I actually would like you to inform me about the things I don't know about. So people were like, basically criticizing me because I said I don't know what some of these things are or mean, like if that invalidates the point of the video. No, that is the point of the video, okay? So anyway, insane tank changes. Maybe this is definitely the biggest build for tank changes. There's no question about it. Up until this point, there hasn't been anything even remotely close. And there's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about here, okay? It's going to be a longer video. And again, I'm not going to know everything about all of this stuff, but I am trying my best to learn. So if you know anything about it, please give your opinion. I'd love to continue on. Now, it's funny because the title of the post is literally tank tuning, okay? And then you read the highlights and you couldn't even tell that there was tank tuning because none of this has any relevance to it. But let's get right to it. Before we start, I want to talk about the most important one to me, of course, not to everybody, but for me as a Blood DK main, this was a very big change. And I will say this, the Blood DK community has been basically trying to get Blizzard to do this for a long time now, like a couple years at least. I remember this being a very this is something that should just happen because it's looked at as so absurdly mandatory, and I can understand why. The big thing about ossuary is that it allows you to bank a larger pool of Death Strike that overcomes a third Death Strike usage when you have the extra 10 runic power and you have 5 less, because of the bone shield charges. So this is an incredibly powerful talent. It's always been. I've always kind of not necessarily loved it as far back as Legion. And it's been on a relatively interesting row for a while now. But here is the row that has changed. Okay, so Blood Tap. Unfortunately, it was probably one of my favorite additions in Shadowlands to the Death Knight. Obviously, AMZ is the hype one, but this one is just really fun. Even though it was relatively very standard, kind of passive. It just felt really good to kind of open a pack with extra rune usage and all that. And I'm kind of sad to see it go. It's stupid to say because obviously we got a mandatory talent taken off the row, but we traded one of my favorite things in the game about Blood DK. So I certainly can still take this. I'm not here to tell you what is and isn't going to be taken on this row, especially not the way I play my DK. I don't know yet. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's just hard to believe with how kind of passive this was. I would not be surprised if it's looked at as not a good pick. Even though it's listed as an active ability, I feel like it has very little rotational usage. Like you just kind of use it every minute and that's it. And the thing about it is, Fall Bulwark is good. Like we talked about its value a lot in the last few years, actually, between Legion and BFA for different things. And this could end up being a really big thing for early on in the expansion when you have less defense overall. But Relish in Blood, I do think that this was kind of maybe overlooked a little bit in some ways. It was a Blood DK Azurite option, and it was like looked at, especially in Mythic Plus, as something you just take 3 of. Pretty valuable. The thing is, it's not as good as that. It's a little different in that way because it doesn't grant you a ton of haste. But this is, the heal. It depends on how much that heal does over time. Realistically, it's probably very little. I mean, that number looks ridiculously low. But we'll see, per bone shield how high that gets on average, and then immediately 10 runic power. So, I mean, this is the only one. It's an interesting row. It's more interesting than it was, that's for sure. So I'm glad to see that. And one way or the other, they were right to say that that row was never going to be anything but take ossuary. So it's a good choice. The other problem I have with it though is you don't get it until 58. That's kind of annoying because that means all through pre-patch I'm not going to have it. And then I'm going to have it again. So it's going to be relatively, you're going to have to kind of unlearn a playstyle and then relearn it after a month or two. So, or however long, I don't know. Pre-patch is probably not going to be that long. But anyway, so that's it for Blood. So you might say that the fact that there's no changes to Blood, that's, you might have an opinion on that. But then you're going to watch the rest of these unfold. And then you're starting to think like, uh-oh. You know what I mean? Like all the other tanks got major changes. We started with Warrior. We made a video on that. Then we went to Prop Paladin. Prop Paladin got ridiculous changes about 2 weeks ago, and now they got another set of relatively ridiculous changes in the other direction. And then we've seen now Demon Hunter and Brewmaster get up like really, really sizable changes. Okay, Blood DK has not had any sizable changes at all. I don't think they've had one. Not one big patch, okay? And Bear kind of hasn't either. Now, Bear's kind of in the other direction. It's looking a lot like Bear's going to be looked at again as the worst tank for Mythic Plus especially. Mediocre for raids at best. Blood DK has a lot of intangibilities. Always going to be good. But maybe they're kind of now on the top of the heap. Is that a bad thing? Frankly, I don't like it. If it was me, I would have Blood DK kind of middle of the pack, kind of where they were in BFA. Where they were in Legion, definitely was not comfortable with that because I felt like it was kind of just so popular that people were going to play it for the wrong reasons, and I'd rather not bring that attention to the spec because I love it regardless. Even if it's the worst tank, even if it's looked at as unplayable, in fact, that would probably be my best circumstance because then I could considerably outplay what the average would look like. So, but anyway, so let's talk a little bit about Demon Hunter. So I'm going to go through all these changes again, and I fair warning, I have not actually played this spec yet this week, but we played it a lot right again, just like Paladin 2 weeks or whatever it was. I played Demon Hunter right before these changes, so unlucky. I keep seeing this happening here, but so demonic wards, it doesn't seem like anything changed. I don't know what this means, ABS, but if anybody knows, let me know. It's probably some kind of shorthand or something that I don't know about. Now here's a big start, okay? So Fell Devastation was changed from a 45-second cooldown to a 1-minute cooldown. And this is, it looks relatively like, well, that's, a small nerf, I guess. But the big problem here is that there's a legendary that me and Jix and others as well were talking about being extremely, not even just valuable, fun. Just straight out, it's fun. Very, very fun legendary for Vengeance Demon Hunter. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Vengeance Demon Hunter has my favorite tank moment right now. At least it did before these changes. I don't know. Should still have it. But the moment where you jump in, you're relatively weak, you're still establishing yourself, and then you pop Fell Devastation with the demonic talent, and you went from like maybe 40% health to a god. Like you're unkillable for however many seconds, okay? So they nerfed that pretty substantially. And it's not just with Fell Devastation. We'll keep going. But it's only a 1-minute CD. It's not like it's, it could be a 1.5-minute CD. That's what I actually expected when I heard they increased it. I was surprised that it was only 1 minute. But that does really nerf that legendary, which gives you a chance, I think it's like a 20% chance to have Fell Devastation not incur a cooldown when you use it. I had 4 back-to-back uses of Fell Devastations. That means 3 procs from the legendary. So really fun, and that's realistically, it could still happen, but it's now you're only going to have that chance once every minute. So that's actually a huge nerf to that legendary. I think they should buff the legendary. You nerfed the CD of it. You've now just completely nerfed that legendary in the same way. Buff the legendary by 5% or maybe even 10%. Then it'll be, I don't know. Okay, so anyway, basically the summary here is that there's just a bunch of small nerfs, okay? And I guess the whole Souls thing, I don't really like I said, I don't really know a ton about this as Demon Hunter is not my main, but consuming a lesser soul fragment heals you for 8% of all damage taken, minimum 1% maximum health. Now it's 6% of all damage taken. So, if that was Blood DK, that would be looked at as a pretty sizable nerf because, the way the minimum death strike works with Bone Shield or whatever, Blood Shield, that would not be headed in the right direction. So something like that happened for DK would be like, oh, that's bad, and it happened coming out of Legion, and if that happens again coming out of BFA, I'll be like, oh, that's a nerf. So I don't know, it does seem like it's a nerf. But then you have Soul Cleave heals for an additional amount outside of on top of each soul fragment consumed. So it consumes the soul fragment and then heals extra. Is that right? I believe that's what that means. So and then I guess they nerfed wait, no. Heal yourself for 50% of attack power. Oh, that's interesting. I guess I misread that the first time I looked at that. I thought they nerfed the damage it did, but instead it nerfs the overall healing it did. So I'm not really sure. This is like the rank 2 of it. So they nerfed the base and then buffed the rank 2, which I don't know if that's a thing, like a big thing or not. So let me know what you guys think. Anyway, then here comes the talent. So this is where things get a little unfortunate. So demonic is now also going to last for 6 seconds instead of 8 seconds. And again, on paper, it doesn't look like it's that big of a change, but it's going to add up, especially with the playstyle I was discussing. We're going to have a lot less uptime on meta now because of it. Like I said, the situation with kind of jump in, breathe fell flames all over the place, get a proc from the legendary, do it again, another proc, do it a third time. We're having really long meta uptime. That on top of meta and Sinful Brand. Not that they interact when you get demonic procs, but between like the power that meta had naturally and then the whole situation with Sinful Brand, it's like, wow, this spec is freaking bonkers, man. It is so electric. In the right moments, it's the most fun. Even more than DK, which is, guys, if you don't know me, that is saying something. That's not just words. That means a lot coming out of my mouth. But yeah, unfortunately, pretty much the two tanks besides DK that I like the most, their main reasons I like them got heavily nerfed this patch, this build. So anyway, there's a bunch of other stuff. I mean, it seems like Immolation Ore has been buffed, which is kind of crazy because it was already doing a fair amount of damage. I assume that's for both Vengeance and Havoc, but a lot of this seems like it's only for Havoc, even though it says it's for Vengeance. That's not what meta does. For Vengeance, obviously, it's only Havoc that leaps in the air and does damage, right? So I don't know. Throw glaive, small buff. Basically, apparently I don't actually know this to be true because I'm not seeing it anywhere. But apparently they nerfed like the passive amount of damage that Vengeance or Demon Hunter in general does, and they buffed all the actual spells by a small amount. I don't know why they do stuff like that. There must be a reason, but I'm not smart enough to know it. Sinful Brand buffed, and that was the one that was like, why would you buff that? So everything got small buff because of that, apparently. So anyway, then we go down to Druid, and as you see, basically nothing going on here. Balance, some random PvP talent that I don't know anything about, not doing PvP. But then maybe this Iron Fur changes something, I don't know. I mean, it's of course a spell that's main usage is as a tank. It says it's a small buff, whatever, a 10% buff or something. But I don't know. Does that actually work for Bear? Because it's in the general tab, which I guess is not necessarily a problem because that's just where all the tank or like Iron Fur is like for all 4 specs now. So I don't know. Maybe that's something, but Hunter obviously not playing those stupid specs. Okay, so here we go. Now, this is where things got a little controversial. Or not necessarily controversial, but let me run you through what the last few weeks have looked like. So about 2 weeks ago, I played Brewmaster and was absolutely stunned by it, okay? During the video, though, I recorded, or we live streamed me playing Brewmaster, right? And I had an expectation for the tank, and the things that I was expecting, they didn't really work out the way I expected them to, okay? It was more about, like, some auxiliary parts of the spec. So I was slightly displeased with those things when I was playing them. But overall, I knew where I was at with Brewmaster. Like, my thoughts were in the right, like, they were headed in the right direction. Okay, so I didn't bring up a lot of the things that I then ended up bringing up in the video I made. And for some reason, like, this group of people, they went and, like, watched both of them and compared the fact that within 24 hours I had completely changed my view on Brewmaster and that I was like causing some like civil unrest or something in the community because of this. I'm like, no, trust me, like, this is not what happened here. And so what the situation amounted to was me saying that Brewmaster felt very overpowered considering I was very unskilled at it. Like, I literally did not even have a weak ore to track Celestial Brew, let alone anything else, okay? Not another thing. And I was, like, feeling, like, unkillable. And that Celestial Brew was, like, over double my health. In fact, if I remember correctly, I don't want to say the wrong number again, but there was like a 60k or higher shield. That video's still there. You can go look at the comments. There's chains of comments, like 12 plus comments long. I don't know. I don't know what happened in that video. I really don't. But all I know is that Brewmaster was overpowered. Okay, you're not going to change my opinion on that. And the main reason that I felt that way was because I thought they were balanced around getting Celestial Brew, which was a spec-defining ability. like a Death Strike or Shield Block. And then they also got a buff to Stagger, which at the time, Magic Stagger was not a thing. Now it is again. And they got a buff to that after being this overpowered. So it's like, hold on a second. The spec cannot go live like this, okay? And it has not. It's now been changed. So I'm sure some of those same people are I don't really know where their stance was on this, because I was under the impression that they were just mad that I was pointing out what I thought was obvious about a spec that was clearly not going to stay the way it was for any extended period, and that they were upset about that. And then maybe the criticism would be like, oh, if Blood DK was this powerful, you wouldn't want the spec to be nerfed either. But it's like, no, I would. that's the I'm not like everybody else. I tell you, I do not want my spec to be overpowered, because it draws unfair, then knee jerks. You don't want this to get out. Like, seriously, you do not want this to get out of beta like this, because if it did, the first tier would be a mess, and there would be a knee-jerk nerf like there was in Season 2 of BFA for Blood DK. So, so let's talk about what's actually changed here. So Celestial Brew was nerfed substantially. The size of it at a baseline level is now much, much lower, okay? But I still had one that was, at least one, and I didn't look at every single one because I didn't have proper weak orders. But you could watch the video. We played Brewmaster again today. There was at least one, if not more than one, I'm sure there was more than one, where it was my full health. Okay, so a full health absorb, still, after these nerfs, okay? Still, after multiple nerfs now to this spell. Anyway, the big change here is that it was changed from 30 seconds to 1 minute. So obviously the size of it is one thing, but they also changed it from 30 seconds to 1 minute. And that is just not okay for me. Okay, we'll talk about that after, but they also changed Purifying Brew. So they had already nerfed Purifying Brew's interaction. This used to be 400%, now it's 200%. They nerfed that, and then now they also nerfed 15-second recharge to 20-second recharge. This happened a couple weeks ago, and now this happened this week, so now a 20-second recharge. So right out of the gate, they basically just lost considerable access in terms of uptime to their active mitigation. That is their active mitigation, right? Purifying Brew didn't get nerfed that bad, but it does add up, and Celestial Brew got, doubled, right? So that's a big problem. Now, we already had a lot of concerns with Celestial Brew being up 100% of the time. I said that there was a couple different ways that they could have fixed that, and any of them probably would have been fine. Unfortunately, they did 2 out of the 3 that I suggested instead of just 1, which is not, listen, this spell is just too fun. It's too freaking fun. To have this spell on a 1 minute CD is not as fun. It's half the fun. That's the way I feel about the spec now. I'm having half the fun that I used to have on the spec, because it was so freaking fun to put up a full health absorb and then watch a mechanic just do 0 damage to you. That is just so freaking fun, and it's obviously overpowered. So what they should do instead is take it back to 30 seconds, and if you have to nerf it further, do that. That's my opinion, okay? And if you disagree with that, that's fine. I don't, whatever. I'm just having a conversation, but I'm not going to do this again in the comments where people are just, railing on me about things. It's just my opinion. I feel like the spec is very fun when you have a lot of access to Celestial Brew, but it is overpowered, okay? Those are not conflicting statements. Do you understand? I want this to be clear. Just because I like something doesn't mean I can't think it's overpowered from an objective standpoint. So yes, I do think right now I had a lot less fun on it, and I think the choice to make it 30 seconds and nerf it more, if that needs to happen, is much better than nerfing it a fair amount and also doubling its CD. Now, there's some things to keep in mind here. We talked a lot about Bone Dust Brew today, okay? That's a Necrolord Covenant ability that should substantially help the CD uptime. We also talked about, somebody called it Energizing Brew, but that's apparently the Windwalker. I think it's called Black Ox Brew. It just snaps the CD off, so you can use 2 back-to-back with this. Now that spell is a talent, and it's actually a 2-minute CD as well, but it can be modified by brew, by Keg Smash brew stuff, you know what I mean? So realistically, that probably gets modified by Bone Dust Brew too. So that's, and then also Blackout combo, which should substantially change that too. So now there is a lot of options. Okay, so it's almost like, well, maybe that's why they nerfed it. And that sucks if that's the case, because I don't like using any of those things. I didn't want to take Bone Dust Brew. I did not want to take Black Ox Brew or whatever, and I certainly did not want to take Blackout Strike or whatever those. I don't remember. Blackout Combo. That's it. I didn't want to take any of those things. Okay, so now they've kind of put themselves in a position here where it's like now those things feel like they're mandatory and really, really needed to maximize the spec, but now I'm just not going to enjoy the spec now. So I don't know, because it's not something that wasn't a problem before. It's just if you had a 30-second CD with haste taken down to like, and then light brewing or whatever taken down to like 20 some seconds, and you kept reducing it even further on top of that, you'd have like a 5-second shield and it wouldn't even be needed that often. It would just be expiring constantly. So it wasn't even a good thing then. So now it's like, oh, now we really need that. Before it was like, well, we could do that, but it's not really needed. So I think, again, please go back to 30 seconds. Nerf the spell more if you have to. Go back to 30 seconds. It's so much more fun. They also changed Shuffle. It now increases effectiveness of Stagger from 75 to 100%. I said this on stream, and somebody said, but they nerfed Stagger. I don't see that anywhere. If anybody could tell me where that is or how they know that for a fact, let me know, because it's not anywhere on here. I didn't see that in-game anywhere. I don't know. I must have missed it, but if that's the case and this isn't a net change, let me know. If it's a small change or like in some direction, let me know that too, because all I know is it did seem like they were trying to put, a bigger window of power in, or a window of power in a kind of a wider time span with these changes, but then give you more passive power again, because Shuffle obviously just going to be up all the time. So then they also changed Scalding Brew, which is a huge damage component on top of the Keg Smash double legendary. And yeah, this class really, they got hit pretty hard. A lot of people use the word gutted. I hate hearing that because it's such a stupid term, but realistically, this was a big nerf to their defense. Now, a lot of people ask me, what do I think about Brewmaster? Probably got a good 50 questions about that on the live stream. And the answer is, they didn't really need the defense they had. Like, it was overpowered. It was just overpowered. It really was. I did not do a single key where I was like, oh my God, thank God I just got a 3 times HP pool absorb. I really needed that. Like, no, it just always expired. I never used the shield. And it, a very, very, very unlikely that it was going to actually be 100% absorbed. But on the other foot, a lot of the times I used it at its lowest power and it just went away instantly. So it is way worse, way weaker. But my problem with the spec is not its defense. It's nothing else. It's just it's so freaking boring again. You're sitting there and you have no actual active mitigation for like 30 seconds at a time. You know what I mean? And again, that's very likely me playing it poorly. But I do think that the nerf from 30 seconds to 1 minute was a big mistake on Celestial Brew. I would rather them nerf the spell further if they have to. So, just like the Paladin changes, I'm hoping to see more come in subsequent weeks. But let's move on. So anyway, Paladin is next. Some big changes for them again too. This is a lot of tanks, guys. So let's try to keep it focused. Shining Light, okay? So if you're, again, so like this feels like this has been going on for months now. We've been talking about the situation with Word of Glory and how their power could really become, how their niche could really become this off healer, okay? Almost in raids, I expected it. 5-mans, I thought it would be neat, but they made it a lot harder in the last build. If you haven't watched that video, feel free to go do that, but they changed it again. So here's what they changed it to. Shining Light. So it used to be Shield of the Righteous increases the healing of your next Word of Glory on yourself by 20%. And that was because they changed Word of Glory to work differently. So when you use it on yourself, it used to do more, and then they nerfed that and then added that as a passive. So basically what they did was they did a small buff here. Okay, so they restored Word of Glory to up to 300% based on your missing health, because they had nerfed that to 150 in compensation for this passive. Now, they basically unnerfed the thing, kind of the net negative or maybe even a buff to the passive's old iteration, removed it, and then added this one. So it's a buff. Every 5 Shield of the Righteous, is that even the right way to put that? Make your next Word of Glory free. Now it doesn't reduce the holy power of the spell, which is what I preferred, because it works way better that way, especially with Divine Purpose. But now it can just be free. 5 Shield of the Righteous. That's a lot of holy power. But now it gives you one free. So you're going to need something to track that meticulously because you're not going to want to waste that. If somehow you use 10 and you didn't use a Word of Glory, that would be such a huge value lost. But it does open the door back to being able to heal others without needing to waste too much active mitigation. That's the big thing. If you're in a situation, so imagine this scenario. You're in a raid, you're not actively tanking. You're taking very, very little damage, if any at all. 5 Shield of the Righteous is nothing. It has nothing to do with defense at that point. It's just offense. But now you're getting a free Word of Glory. You don't need it. You could heal either the other tank or other players in the raid. That's the goal. I like that playstyle. Means I don't have to feel forced into not doing offense or, keeping up active mitigation to be able to heal others. And that's how they changed it. And at that point, it's just like Brewmaster. I said, well, the main reason I was having fun playing the spec has now been nerfed. Thanks for stopping by. So, of course, I don't play these specs as my main. I don't play these specs like most people probably would. I look for these kind of fun little niche things. They'd be like, oh, this would be cool if I could do this kind of thing. And it usually never ends up working out. But anyway, okay. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there's some other things here. Shield of the Righteous. The armor thing got buffed again, which is probably a bigger deal than I'm making out to be. We had a huge discussion about this last week. Basically, what they did was they nerfed Shield of the Righteous. Let's see if we can find out exactly what that was. I think it was 190 to 120, and now it's back to 170. Not exactly sure about this. But anyway, they nerfed it, and then they added 5% damage reduction to Consecrate. And, Sigma was like, well, we're nerfing this so you don't have as much active mitigation, but now you're getting a more passive mitigation, and it should be about equal. People were like, well, Sigma, I did the math, and it's wrong. And then he was like, all right, cool, buff it. Like, so, I mean, I kind of always saw that coming. So that's why I don't really feel like it's a big deal. But let's see. Changelog. Okay, so we can see. Oh, yeah, it's also 9.0.2. How weird is that? Anyway, so it's 170, 120. Yeah, so it was 190. It was actually 150 at one point. Was that BFA? In BFA, it's 150. Then it got buffed to 190. And now it's 120. And then it's changed this week to 170. So I definitely, so now people were saying like, oh, it's a bit of a toss up because of how armor scaling works and how, like, if you play Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon backwards on a Friday night, it's going to be slightly better. All these ridiculous things that I can never comprehend. But now, like, should we just say that it's now like definitely a buff? I have no freaking idea. The spec has literally yo-yoed, like went down and went back up again. I have no idea. Let me know what you think. What a bizarre week for tanks. I think that's it. I don't think there was any changes at all for Warrior. Something about Rend. I don't know what the hell. Oh, well, actually, this looks like a big change. I don't know what this means. I haven't seen anybody talking about it. It's almost just like too passive, I think, for people to really care about it. But I mean, that's a big buff, right? Like, let's put it this way: if Bear got that buff, we'd be like, oh, Bear got the big buffs. But like Prot Warrior getting a buff, it's like, well, I don't know. So let me know. Yeah, again, Bear the only one not on the list. I mean, that Ironford thing kind of looks like a buff. I don't really know. But what a crazy week. That's all I can say. So thanks for watching. It wasn't that long, actually. So thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. Just go through the list. Blood DK, what do you think about the ossuary change? I'm sure most people are in favor of it. I just kind of lament the fact that one of my favorite spells was now relegated to a talent, which, unfortunately, I don't know. Maybe it will be looked at as good. I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. 2, I cannot believe the yo-yo that just happened with Prop Paladin. Literally, like, the thing that I liked the most about them got nerfed, and the thing that I disliked the most about them, like with their kind of spiky mitigation style, got a big kind of change too. And then people were like, well, now they're even worse than they were. And then they got changed, so now people are probably gonna be like, oh, now they're even better than they were. Like, I can't follow it too much. And then obviously Vengeance and Brewmaster just got, just ate some big nerfs. But let's put it this way. This is now 4 builds in a row with major tank changes. Major. Not just like, oh, but small change. Bear can now be a cat. So no, they could always be a cat. It was useless anyway. They didn't need that. So anyway, here we go. Tell me what you think. Tell me more what you predict. Thanks for watching. We'll see you undoubtedly in another big video next week.